I don't know how long this manga series has been on my radar, been on my TBR, but I finally read it last night and it was wonderful and I am very excited to talk about it. Hello friends, happy Friday, so very excited that you're here. I'm going to be doing a manga review on a series that's been out for quite some time. I feel like it's very popular in the shoujo community, especially when it comes to like shoujo isekai, and it's definitely been in some of the like top 5, top 10 most voted manga in my largest reading review shoujo spree that I've hosted the past 2 years. And so I knew this is what I wanted to read. Even more so though, I want to do a huge shout out to my friend Sarah. Sarah actually gifted me the first volume for my birthday. I think it was this year. I feel like she's one of the biggest fans of this series because she was so hoping it would win and unfortunately didn't quite make it, but I assured her I would read it. And so recently, I should say at some point, I bought volume 4. I think I even before volume 1, honestly, because my library didn't have it. And then recently I sold some books at Second and Charles and did like a swap thingy for store credit. Bought volumes 2 and 3 because I saw them half off. And I was like, oh, this is the time. Enough rambling. That series is Fiance of the Wizard. As I've said, this series has been out for quite some time. When I shared my haul that I got from Second and Charles, a lot of people were, well, I feel like quite a few people, I should say, were excited that I picked up volumes 2 and 3. I knew my library had at least volumes 1 through 3, but I was sort of iffy in the sense of like, I knew me, I haven't been going to the library as much this year because it's like out of the way of my normal route, dropping off my kids and all of that. And so I'm like, I have to really make a conscious effort to go there. And I'm like, well, if I buy volumes 2 and 3, I know I will read it faster. And sure enough, that is exactly what happened. I think it was like, I read the other things that I got from Second and Charles, and then I read this one in 2 days. I really, really enjoyed it. But first, let me tell you what this manga is about, in case if you're not familiar with it. So it's about our main girl here. I hope I'm saying her name right, Filimena, and she realizes when she's 3 years old that she has been reincarnated in this fantasy sorcery kind of world. She has memories from her past life of being in Japan. She was, I believe, a 30-year-old woman. Truck-kun striked, or car-kun, one of those. They striked, and now she's living in this world. Well, she was like, oh, well, this is really similar to RPG games and other things I've heard. She's like, I'll definitely be like the chosen one in this world, and she's just excited for this second chance. She's wrong, though, that she's not the chosen one. She ends up meeting this young man here who's, the nickname she's given him is Eddy because his full name is really long. And I'm like, we're just gonna call you Eddy for the foreseeable future at this point. But she come to find out that he is actually a very powerful wizard, and he is the stepson, sort of adopted stepson of her, well, she calls him uncle, but he is just a very close friend to her father. They, as young children, start to become friends. Unknowingly to her, she sort of makes a promise when asked that she will be his fiance, and she waits for 7 years for him to come back from Wizard Academy, and so begins their love story. I really feel this is a series you need to read it all. And the reason I say that is because while I enjoyed every volume, I loved both of the characters as kids. I really liked Eddy as a young child, but when he grows up, when he goes to the Magic Academy and comes back, what happened to your personality, bro? What happened to your personality? I really disliked how he talked to Filimena. I was very upset, and I felt like I had a very love-hate relationship kind of here. Well, I wouldn't say it was that extreme, but I was very upset with how he was talking to her. And I think a large part of that is because Filimena, I mean, she loves him very dearly. And I want to pause here. I hope I remember my train of thought. Now, it may sound sort of like red alert when I said that this is an isekai. She was 30 years old in her past life and now she is, you know, a young child. And it's like, that's sort of weird because Eddy's also the same age as her. What I thought was very well done for an age gap manga. Very, very light spoilers, just to give an idea. I'm not going to go in depth about it because I want to keep this video spoiler free as possible. I will say they waited until he was of age, I guess you would say. Even past that, there was still waiting, and I thought it was extremely well done because I was really worried. I'm like, you have the mind of a 30-year-old woman and you're with, we'll say, like a 10-year-old boy. Like, this is just wrong on so many levels. But no, in the beginning, she just had a very strong fondness and affection for him, not in a romantic way, but I would say many, many years later, when he's of age as well, she starts to develop feelings for him. And so I really, really appreciate how that was handled, how that was really well done, and just very unique, because for the first 2 volumes, I mean, we, the reader, are reminded that she has been isekai'd and what she feels her age is and how she makes comments that she is more mature than other people. Well, they make more comments about her, and then, you know, she internally comments on their comment. She acts the way she does because she is an older woman, basically just in a younger person's body. So I wanted to point that out because at first I was like, oh my goodness, what is about to go down? When I saw they were kids, but again, she always treats him very respectfully. There's no kind of romantic inklings at all, at least for her. None, until much, much later. So let me go back to Eddy and what I was saying, that we see Filimena, that she's fallen for Eddy many years later, and she cares for him. She's been eagerly looking forward to him coming back home, seeing the changes in him, seeing how he's grown, and he just outright says something really rude to her, and I feel like reoccurringly that he was being rude to her, and I'm just like, Filimena is heartbroken right now, and you're acting like a jerk, more or less. And the story does say that he was nervous, and I get that. I do. I get that. But it gave you no right. But here's the thing. This is when storytelling can really save a manga, because again, I enjoyed this. I was already planning to read volume 2, but I felt like volume 2 was going to sort of be a deal breaker. But what was so interesting about this first volume is the reason I didn't completely hate Eddy's guts and how he acted towards Filimena is because the writing showed from his perspective. We really saw how much he loved Filimena, how much he cared for her, how important it was for him to do well at the Magica Academy. Because one of the really interesting things about this story is when a character has as black hair as him, they are considered, people are afraid of him, because according to the lore of this story, the blacker your hair is, the more powerful your magic is. There's nobody in the kingdom that has as dark hair as he does. And so a lot of people are afraid of him, and he was definitely bullied at the Magical Academy, and that was a reason why his personality changed like a 180 from when he was so sweet with Filimena to coming back and saying these really rude remarks, because that was just what he was used to. Again, I'm not justifying his actions, I don't agree with them, but it did make sense in the context of the story. So when we see those moments and we really see how much he treasures her, because they're writing letters for all these years, they're keeping a consistent communication, so it wasn't like she just waited and that was it. No, she waited and they were actively writing letters numerous times, giving gifts to each other. And so I really appreciated that we got moments, like a full chapter at least, from his perspective, because I got to see like he really does love Filimena. Everything he's doing is for this woman. There's no other reason why he's doing what he's doing, to be the most powerful sorcerer enchanter in this whole kingdom. Like, it is purely for her. And I think that was a very big turning point for me, in the sense of, well, maybe not turning point, but that was something that I felt I needed as a reader to continue to stay invested in the story and continue to hopefully enjoy it. Going into volume 2, I think this might have been my favorite volume. It was either this one or volume 4, because I really loved volume 4 for a lot of different reasons. But with volume 2, it's funny because I really feel like this is a relationship of Sunny and Grumpy. So if you like that Sunny and Grumpy trope, this really lives up to that, I think. And it's funny because if I was irritated by Eddy's grumpiness in volume 1, I loved it in volume 2, and I think it's because Eddy is taken out of being close to Filimena. And I felt bad for Filimena, I honestly did, because she has been waiting so much time, and if there was any gripe I really had with this series, is the lack of communication. I was very upset by that at numerous points. I get it though, and I'm thankful that whenever there was miscommunication, or it wasn't even miscommunication, it was like the lack of good communication. When there was no kind of communication, it was always addressed by the end, and I felt like that was volume 1, that the payoff that I got made everything leading up to that moment 100% worth it. And it was the same in this one. I really wanted Filimena to be more outspoken and to say things to Eddy of her desires, of what she wants, because Eddy is not communicating what he's thinking, and he doesn't really show his love and affection for Filimena. Again, we as a reader, we know because of chapter 1. Moving moving forward and digressing here, I like that grumpiness of Eddy's character because when he's taken away from Filimena and he goes on this quest, he meets the hero, and the hero is an incredible character. I'm not going to show his face because I sort of like that'd be a spoiler. Eddy becomes part of the hero's quest, and I really loved it. Yeah, I think it was the hero's quest. The hero was priceless. He was gold. He brought out the worst and best of Eddy in like the most funniest ways that I really appreciated. Once again, the storytelling and how it was told, and how honestly that it was that separation that Eddy had from Filimena where he was able to come back and directly make it known his feelings to Filimena. And I deeply love that. And it was such an emotional volume. I never, like for volume 2 specifically, I never expected to be on the point of tears, honestly. And it wasn't even like because of good things, because this is a really happy cover, okay? There's good things, but that happens at the end. And there's a lot of sad things before we get to that point. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, please let everything be okay. I'm like, what is going to happen next? We have 2 more volumes after this. But again, Eddy makes his feelings known. Filimena is able to say start saying how she is feeling too and what she desires. And I feel like that was a reoccurring thing that happens for each volume. And it left me feeling so very satisfied in volume 4 when she finally, her and Eddy are having such better communication, because even with Eddy's grumpiness and whatnot, I had no doubts that these two deeply loved each other, that they deeply cared for each other, and that they were there for one another. And when things, very big plot changing things happen, I really feel like Eddy was finally there for Filimena, because Filimena has definitely been there for him the entire time. Though we see in volume 3, this was a very interesting volume because I honestly feel like you could read volume 1 and 2 and call it a day because it was the perfect wrap up. But I think that was, if I'm remembering right, volumes 1 and 2 cover the volume 1 of the light novel, and then volumes 3 and 4 of the manga cover volume 2 of the light novel. So it sort of reminded me of Earl and Fairy, which I did talk about that, where you could sort of just read volume 1 and 2 and be good, and then volume 3 and 4 and be good. Though I wouldn't say just read volumes 3 and 4 because you need volumes 1 and 2. But what was interesting about this volume is Filimena really goes through, I feel like, an interesting struggle. Now, I did feel, and it did not bother me, that Filimena is very much a damsel in distress kind of character. And I think if you don't like that, if you don't like your female characters not being proactive in their safety or for their happiness, I am hesitant to say that somebody would enjoy this series, because again, it did not bother me. That was fine. I was like, whatever, because I honestly found Filimena very relatable in the sense of you're happy, but there is more happiness that you want for yourself in the relationship with another person, especially where things are very hectic in my life, especially when filming this video. I found a lot of relatability in seeing how she handled things, because there's things that are happening in this volume we come to find out are very life-threatening for Filimena. And rather than going to Eddy and making this issue, this problem known, she's like, I'm gonna do it by myself, because she really wants to, and I do feel Eddy was part of the problem of why she felt like this, that she felt she needed to be worthy to stand by his side, in the sense of she needed to be strong. If she couldn't be strong and stand by him, then she felt like she had nothing to sort of give to this relationship, because something happened when they were a child. Eddy took a lot of that burden of what happened to her on his shoulders. And even when she's older, she's still very much a person who will put herself first, even in the course of danger. Despite that she has no magical abilities, she will put her life on the line to help save Eddy or somebody else. Like, that's just kind of the person she is. I guess what I'm trying to say with all of that, I did not mind that she really is not this overarching powerful kind of character. She really is the secondary character in Eddy's hero life. I did think that was very well done, and how too that there were pokes at isekai tropes in this story. I loved when, I think it was like volume 2, when we find out the Lord of Darkness's resurrection's coming, and inside she's like, really? We're gonna call it that? Like, that's so cliche. And I'm like, girl, yes. There were other moments that I really feel like just poked fun of. And so it was refreshing in this kind of sense of just seeing, here is this woman that has no magic. She is trying to do her best. She's trying to be strong and feeling like she's failing and she's struggling. And it made her a very relatable character for that. So I really hope I said that well, because I really just do feel like it could be a a very huge turnoff for people because she's not the most proactive heroine. I definitely don't think she's weak. I think she tries so hard and is one of the most sunniest characters I've seen recently, that, or at least from what I've read in shoujo manga, and I'm like, protect her smile. And so I'm thankful again that things were coming out, that we're finally getting that communication between them and seeing just, both of these characters love the other. And I know I mentioned that, but I feel like sometimes in the story, they're not 100% happy standing by the other person's side. And I think some of that is because they're not admitting openly their feelings to the other person. And I do think if they had, a lot of the problems that take place would have been handled so much differently. Now, one thing that was interesting with this series as well is it started off not slow, but slow in the sense there's not really any action. And then in volume 2, as we're with Eddy and we're seeing him on the hero's quest, we see a lot of action, and that was really cool. And then going into volume 3, we start seeing some magical things that are happening, which we'd only sort of low-key seen before that. That really hits a climax, I guess you would say, in this 4th volume with so much action and magic and the romance, like all just coming together. And I felt like this was the best volume of the series. And that is why I said at the beginning, this is a series I feel like it's appreciated the most for the character development that's happened, for the open communication that's happening, and really seeing the leads be able to express their love for one another and not just sort of like be embarrassed and keep it inside. Because you see all of those moments have shaped this couple to be who they are, and how it just made them so much, not more compatible, I sort of feel like stronger, and just honestly, I love seeing them ultimately be there for each other, not just with action, but with words as well. That was like the number one thing I wanted. I wanted Eddy to be the man, like, not that I didn't feel he was worthy to be by Filemena's side, but again, I had that really rocky start with him that I just didn't know how I would feel about him by the end of the series. But I love this final volume. I really think it took all of the previous elements, put it in this, made a very epic, beautiful, and satisfying ending that left me very happy, and I just really appreciate the series. And I really love just how my own love for this story grew with every volume. It felt very fun and satisfying in that way, because maybe I wouldn't have able to do that with the longer series, but having the 4 volumes and being able to do that was absolutely fantastic. It was so great, and I just was so happy that I continued to read each volume, because I would have been crestfallen if I would have dropped it. And again, I never had that intention or idea when reading, but I wanted to love this series, not just because my friend Sarah gave me this first volume and spoke so highly of it, but I wanted to just love it for me too, you know what I mean? And I did. Ultimately, I did. I reread, I think or skimmed through volume 3 at least 2 or 3 times. So even if like a volume, say, wasn't like my number 1 favorite, like with volume 1, I mean, I felt very invested in these characters' lives, and I was amazed how much I appreciated the storytelling, and how, we get these, I wish we would have actually gotten Eddy's perspective more later on, but I just felt like the foundation was established so well. So it was like at the back of your mind, you always knew that even if Eddy could not convey himself very well or say the right words, that you always knew that it was for Filimena and her protection. It's just poor Filimena, if she could have just been let in on what's happening and she internally voiced that, then she would have just felt so less discouraged, I think, at multiple points. So ultimately, I really enjoyed this series. I would give it a solid 4 stars. I actually gave volume 5 stars though, because that's just how much I enjoyed that. But it is wonderful. It is definitely one I'm keeping on my shelf, and one that I look forward to coming back to, or just randomly flipping through, because of the character development and just the journey I felt like I went on with these characters, and how seeing them grow was just very satisfying for me in a moment of my life where I really needed to see that progression, especially in the relationship, and see these leads come together closer. It was very wonderful. So I would definitely recommend this series if you like I said before, the sunshine and grumpy trope. If you also like childhood friends to lovers, and I would say an engaging isekai story that really has that fantasy and sorcery feel to it, and you like seeing the creators here, or I guess say the author, manga, sort of poke fun at isekai tropes that are pretty popular and have their own unique twist on it in this series. It was wonderful. And if you've read this series, definitely don't hesitate to let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts. I know not everybody loves this series, but I really enjoyed it. And again, thank you, Sarah, for gifting me this volume to kick off my journey of reading this. And if you know any other fantasy isekai that you love that you haven't seen me talk about before, don't hesitate to let me know. I love isekai, so totally give me all the recommendations. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. Bye!